That's your statements. Oh, man. I'm unprepared. Almost didn't get it. So are we at 6? All right, let's call our meeting to order for the Riverdale City Council, Tuesday, December 17th, 2024. Please let the record show that all members of the City Council are present. We also have members of the city staff as well as members of the public. We have asked Councilor Stevens if he would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Stevens. And our invocation will be by Councilor Hanson.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we're grateful for this opportunity to meet together as leaders of the city to review the city's business. And please bless us tonight that we may have open minds, that we may be able to understand and to weigh and to make decisions that are in the best interest of our residents and of our community. We're grateful for the opportunity that we have to serve and to live in this great nation. We're grateful for all the many blessings that we have, and we're grateful for Riverdale and its employees, and please bless them in their efforts and in their work, that they'll be safe and that they'll know that they're appreciated. We love thee and we thank thee for all the many blessings that we have. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Councilor Hanson. We now have a time for public comment. This is an opportunity to address the City Council regarding your concerns or ideas. No action will be taken. No action will be taken during the public comment. Please try to limit your comment to 3 minutes. If you do address the council, please state your name and the city of residence.
Just update the council and open comments. So Chief Warren, Riverdale Police Department. As you asked, we contacted UDOT. They are in the process of putting more signs up to divert traffic westbound on Riverdale Road and then northbound 1900 West, with access points up 31st, 21st, and 12th, just like we discussed. So hopefully that will help. I says, hey, the more signs, the merrier. And like you said, he reiterated it'll be open 6 a.m. Thursday morning. So hopefully this will be a temporary fix to get some of the trucks off the road and traffic going smoother. So
thanks, Chief.
No problem. Thanks.
All right, seeing no other public comment, we will move on to presentations and reports. We'll start with the mayor's report. I just have a couple of things. We had a productive meeting today with Representative Katie Hall and Representative-elect Jill Colford. They came into the city and we spent just over an hour with them. Went over our predicament with our tax problem that we have coming up in 2030. We also talked to them about housing. And how Riverdale is trying to meet the needs of the residents of Weber County as well as Riverdale, trying to do what we can to help with the housing shortage in the state. We also talked to them a little bit about America First, what's going up there, and what we need from UDOT. We need help with that slip ramp and stuff from hopefully money from the Wasatch Front Regional Council to get those things going up there. Mr. Cooper explained to him a little bit about his vision for Stringtown, the Stringtown district, and just what might happen there. Potential, just to kind of let them know what's going on in their districts. Anything you guys want to add from our meeting, Mr. Brooks, Mr. Cooper?
I mean, I think it's just important that we get the word out to anybody and everybody who's willing to listen at this point. I think it was very informative, especially for Jill, because she's new. Katie Hall's met with the mayor and I think even Bart a little bit, so she's a little more familiar with it, but it was pretty positive, I think, for the most part. They understand that this is really putting us in a bind, and we're trying to stress to them that Riverdale's not like anybody else, even the other hold harmless cities. There's no one that's got the small resident population like we do with the huge daytime population. And so that's one of the points we're trying to say. You guys do little things like this at the state level, it could have drastic impacts on us, to the point where we may lose who knows what. But we also told them some of the things we've been working on, things like that. So I think it's pretty good. if it's positive for them to get that. I don't know how much influence they have, but the more ears we can get to hear this, the better. We have plans on that too. We'll be meeting with some of the other hold harmless cities here, hopefully in the near future, and kind of join forces there to keep beating this drum. I mean, if you think about it, we keep saying 2030, but budget-wise, we've got a plan on this in 29. We can't wait till 30. We've got to have this ready to go. So that only gives us 4 years. So all of a sudden, it's getting shorter and closer and closer. So we can't wait, and that will be part of our stuff that we start strategizing on with strategic planning, is moving forward on this and seeing what we're going to do. We presented a number of options to them and expressed our concerns and which ones we feel would be best. But I don't know where it'll land, but we'll see. All we can do is put up a fight and see what happens. There will come a time, and this will be something we'll need to bring up, is we're going to have to look at hiring a lobbyist, I think, and start paying somebody some money to start singing that same song on the state level for us, because it's hard for us to get in a lot of these doors, and we don't have a lot of sympathy when you got some of the leadership against us and we got the league against us and stuff like this. This is going to be a battle. It's going to be tough, but we'll see where we get. We'll give them a fight, nothing else.
It was the most positive interaction I've had with them, because we had lots of time to talk, and we explained to them how we had implemented the franchise taxes, and they really were very sharp. Like, they understood like online shopping and how that's changed the dynamic. Cities like the Terrace are getting sales tax from their online purchases of their 9,000 residents. And one of the things that they really lit up about, we were trying to explain to them how property tax is not going to help us get out of this. We said, look, we did a 94%, essentially 100%. We doubled our property tax. We went from about 750,000 to 1.5 million. We can't raise enough property taxes to fix this problem. And they were like, it kind of finally, resonated with them. They're like, wow, like, you can't get to $2 million by raising property taxes. So anyway, it was the best conversation I've ever had with them. I've talked to Katie and everybody I can, just over and over and over, but it was the first time I felt like they really kind of soaked it in. So we'll see. One more thing, I got a phone call late last night from Mayor Nadolski in Ogden, and he was so complimentary of our police department. They had a horrible tragedy in Ogden yesterday, and I don't know exactly how it works, but somehow the word got to our Riverdale City Police Department, and they rushed to the aid of the fellow officers over in Ogden and provided support to them. And a lot of emotional support, to be honest. Offered to maybe cover shifts or finish their shifts.
We sent 3 of our peer support guys, and then we sent a couple officers to cover calls until their officers were all okay and make sure they got the services they need.
Yeah, and Mayor Nadolski's obviously busy, and for him to call me late at night and make a personal phone call to tell me how much he appreciates our police officers, and just how every interaction he has with them is so positive, and how impressed he is with our department. And he really didn't say that there was other departments or officers. Like, he just was like, Riverdale was the one that came to our aid and just offered all the support and offered to, cover shifts and to help out and to just give that support. And I told him I wasn't surprised. I never am surprised, because Chief Warren runs such an amazing department. And we just kind of talked together about how nice it is to hear positive things about the police. You never want to hear the negative. So
Can I add
yeah,
something?
sure, come on up.
So, I'll try not to get wimpy. So, without going into a lot of details, I get a call from our peer support advisor who works with a lot of the police departments, and she's relaying the bad news to me of what's going on, but as she's relaying it, you're thinking, why is she calling me first? Because she hadn't got to the department. And I can tell you right now, that's the worst phone call. She got to where it was an Ogden City issue, but for about 20 seconds, I think I lost about 10 years off my life, because the thought runs through your mind who it could be, and it's still horrific no matter who it is. But it just goes to show, I think, how important the support is for these officers' mental health, not just the police, but the fire department and all of our employees. And so I was grateful for the guys in our department that were willing to come in on their time off and be there for support. And then we called a few of our guys that came in early as well to go down and help handle calls. But I just want to reiterate how grateful I am because you guys had approved some extra money. We did get some grants to help with some of these programs, but you guys also upped the funds a little bit in your grand approval of things. And so I want to thank you for that and just tell you, I can't imagine what their city and their all their staff, but and as an administrator and probably a mayor and council, you feel more responsible for your people. When you hear that bad news, it's one thing. It's a coworker. It's still horrible, but it's almost like one of your, don't want to say one of your kids, but it's just you have more. You just feel more, So, anyways, I hope they'll get through this. It's a tough situation, but if you get a chance to tell them thanks, that means it's the world. I'll make sure I'll pass it on to my guys.
Please do.
I know they do the same for us. So
Yeah. He definitely wanted me to reach out and tell you thanks and pass it on to your guys. So anyway, thank you for that. And with that, that's all I have. So we'll move on to the next portion of the presentation reports, which is the city administration report. Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Mayor. The department heads' reports are in your packet. Does anybody have any questions on any of the things that may be in there? If not, I will move on. Sales tax report again is in there. Still continuing on. This month is big for us. We're anticipating a big year, but we won't see until we get those numbers back. But at least right now we're moving forward. Not as high as we'd like to be, but we're not losing drastic ground. So that's always a good sign. I did want to point out, Rich Taylor's not here. In your packet, he did note some of the senior center activity in there. If you'll see on the one big colorful page, there was 1,330 meals served for the month. But the big one there is they served 231 on their busiest day, which would have been our Thanksgiving Day dinner. And the word we got is Roy had 180, I think it was, in comparison to us. And so this is, we're actually meeting with them in the morning. And so this will be some information, again, that we'll be able to give them to say, hey, look, Riverdale Senior Center is Weber County Senior Center. Even in our meeting today, one of the representatives indicated that her parents from Davis County come into Riverdale Senior Center. So we'll see what they have. They asked for this meeting. They wanted to make some presentations to us, so we'll know more where the county stands at this point. Hopefully we can maybe get a little bit more money than what they'd previously indicated, but we'll find out. The staffing authorization plan continues. Not a lot of updates on that. I do know the fire department's working hard. We've lost another officer just this week to an injury. He's going to be out again for quite a while. He's been on leave and light duty, and he got injured again. And they're already shorthanded. They are working on that. I know that they have another test coming up soon. They're also working on getting a new captain to replace Chief Hennessy. But as of this date, it hasn't moved any more than that. Employee recognitions, we don't have anybody for their anniversary dates, but I would recognize Chief Hennessy for his 19 years. He's the highest one on the other. The others are a lot smaller. Juan Torres, I don't know if you guys remember him. Juan was with us once before and then left and went to the county, and now he's back. He's been here again 2 years. I can't believe it's been that long. So, other than that, Brandon will give us a little community development report. The one thing I would mention on there, and we are this close to having a big announcement for you guys. And we thought, I know I keep doing this to you. We thought we had it tonight. When we did this agenda, it was put on there because we thought we had it.
But we're not going to tell you.
But we're not going to tell you. But we are close. It could be before Christmas still.
It needs to be before Christmas.
This is a big one. This is a big one. It is a big one. But we just don't want to jeopardize anything until we know that's locked in. And we can express that the contracts are out and being signed. That's how close we are. And we thought we would have it back by now, but it may still be this week, but we just don't have it tonight. We don't want to take that chance, but we're close. Just hold your breath. We're close. This is a good one. Having said that, I had to bait you a little bit. I told Brandon I have fun with this, so I'll turn the time over to him to wrap up the rest of it.
So not as exciting, but a little exciting because we're filling some empty buildings we have or empty spaces. We have received application for a Big and Tall's store where the Aaron's furniture used to be. So a more soft good retail there. And then Good Vets has applied for a tenant improvement at the Merrill building at 1140 West. So those are two new ones that are on the list of those that have that are ongoing, that continued development. Panera's making good progress with the demolition. The Ken Garff Honda has received, I think, occupancy for their service base, so they'll start to move folks into that back building. The front building, the showroom, isn't done quite yet, but it's kind of musical chairs for them there. They'll start to get some service capacity increased, and then once they move some personnel around, they'll demolish that old building that used to be their showroom and continue on the new building across the face of the property. So that'll be a great addition to the frontage of Riverdale Road.
Okay.
That's it.
Do we have an update on the taco place?
They're still under construction, a little bit slow, surprisingly. But yeah, they're making progress. They haven't received their final yet, but they're close.
Okay.
Signs are up, I noticed. They've probably been up for a while,
Yeah,
but
they've been up
I
for a
drove by
while.
there today and saw them. So.
Yeah. So what about
That was our big announcement, sorry.
What's the tacos?
It's
the barbecue place, right? Mission, can we talk about that at all? Or?
We can. We have a design review committee scheduled for tomorrow for a Mission Barbecue, which is the first in Utah. There's nothing this side of Colorado that I know of. And so they'll be looking to go into the honey baked ham, and we'll renovate that, and it will be a nice kind of fast casual type of a barbecue.
And honey baked ham is still in there and open, right?
Right. I don't know the details. I believe that and Joanna, this is your group, Kimley Horn. Yeah.
Yep, I'm familiar with it.
She's here for Starbucks, but it's the same firm that's doing the work. And my assumption is Honey Baked Ham has their lease through the end of the year because the holidays is the big part of their business. And Mission Barbecue would probably take occupancy and pursue a permit in the month of January.
Okay. Your mic on? Yeah.
Mike?
Your mic on?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Okay.
Can you hear me?
I'm glad you said she was for Starbucks because I was watching it because I thought she was from the Standard or something, and I was like, we don't know who she is.
Okay, thank you for that update. And putting our minds at ease. We will now move on to consent items. Consideration to approve the meeting minutes from the November 19th, 2024 council work session and council meeting. Are there any corrections or changes to those meeting minutes? Seeing none, a motion to approve them would be in order.
So moved.
We have a motion. We have a second.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? All right, those minutes are approved. Our second consent item is consideration to approve the 2025 council meeting schedule. Any questions or changes or comments about the upcoming schedule for the upcoming year? Seeing none, we need a motion to approve that.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? All right, that is also approved. We'll move on to action items. Number one, consideration of site plan amendment for Starbucks Coffee, located at approximately 1140 West Riverdale Road, as requested by Starbucks Coffee and Kimley Horn and Associates. Mr. Cooper.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. We do have a presentation, so as that gets pulled up, I will introduce again Miss Joanna Graham with Kimley Horn, representing Starbucks. She'll be able to answer any specific questions that I don't cover. Before you again is the site plan amendment. So this is the amendment to the existing Starbucks that is there at the Merrill Building at 1140 West Riverdale Road. It does have an existing drive-through, and so the proposed improvements would enhance the drive-through to create better circulation around the site through the drive-through and allow Starbucks to meet some of their production goals, so to speak, through the drive-through in terms of the number of folks that get seen. Some of the elements of design, again, are related specifically to the site around the building. So it's removal of existing paving markings, curb gutter, and signage and bollards. And then installation of some new concrete, some new striping to redirect that traffic, new signage both at the drive-through area and as well as the entrance and the circulation around the site. There's some additional mobile order windows that will be static, but it gives a customer the ability to look at what they might order well before they get to the actual order board. So that's helpful in moving people along. And then there's some really nice additions of some ADA improvements, both at the front of the building with a dedicated ADA stall and ramp, as well as an ADA crosswalk. You see there in the picture that is new, that would allow folks to cross the parking lot from the west side parking into the sidewalk adjacent to the building. So in your packet, you have the site plan, but here's a comparison of the existing conditions and the proposed conditions. If you've been over there, you know that they utilize the old drive-through area of the bank that used to be there. And so this proposed plan actually makes better use of that drive-through area. The canopy would stay, but the landscaped island there gets removed along with its landscaping and gets put back in a different format, but with stamped concrete and gravel and things to allow for that circulation to happen in a better way. There is markings there, striping that go around the corner of the building. We looked back and forth on that to see what the best solution might be as to prevent people from coming off of 1150 and just snaking in line. And we ultimately landed on the striping with the idea that folks will come around that island and basically make a right turn into the queue, because they're not able to hit the order board if they snake in line. They'll surpass that. So I think it's a really good design that will help the traffic flow. So all of the same entrances and exits are in place, but there is some better signage off of Riverdale Road. You can see there on the proposed plan, the number 12 note there on the right side of the diagram is some new signage that will direct people coming, making a right turn or left turn off of Riverdale Road into the site. And then circulating around with those green arrows. Those are Starbucks proprietary markings that they use on the pavement that will guide people through their drive-through along with the signage. So some of our considerations were just that circulation and how this might better improve the circulation. This is an interesting site. If you go back to the aerial, you can see the yellow is really the property boundary. So they utilize a cross-access easement, and they benefit from traffic coming off of 1150 and off of Riverdale Road over an adjacent property's ownership. And so we wanted to make sure that there was the required and adequate cross-easement agreements in place that not only would continue to allow that movement to happen, but to also allow the Merrills, which is the owner of the property on behalf of Starbucks, to make the improvements to the adjacent site. And so all that's in place, and we were happy with that. And then again, just looking at how access through the site might look with the queuing on the drive-through, access to the dumpster, which is there just on the entrance off of 1150 there. And so all that seems to work in terms of the studies and the diagrams that were done. So Planning Commission looked at this on December 10th and has forwarded to you a favorable recommendation. And we also recommend approval based on the proper compliance to the final comments or the final things that will come out of this. This will be a site plan permit, not a building permit per se, and so we'll go through that with the applicant and make sure that everything's in order before the work starts. And we did get a signature from the adjacent property owner acknowledging that this work is approved from them, and so we're happy with that. So with that, I would turn the time back over to the council for any questions, maybe for myself or Ms. Graham.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Stevens.
All right, whoever wants to answer.
We'll have you come up to the microphone, please.
There is okay, I live right by there. I don't patronize that establishment. However, when I go to work on 1150 before 6 a.m., there are a lot of cars on 1150 waiting to turn in and so on. But, and I'm sure you've done traffic patterns. There is, just to the north in that same building, north of Starbucks, is an empty business, or there's an insurance, or there was an insurance. I don't even know if it's still there. I think it's just signage. Are they expanding, or is the traffic keeping businesses from going in there? I'm not sure. Are you following? Because there's an empty space there in that building.
Are you talking about the bank that's
bank.
just
No,
north?
The drive-through. Oh,
Well, no. Okay, if you look at, if you're standing on
it's an
1150, yeah,
Oh.
there's
Like
insurance.
farmers insurance.
That's still going to be there. So that's actually, we're providing a crosswalk that goes from the parking stalls on the very western side to get to those businesses. So we're keeping those doors intact. They still have a sidewalk to their front door, and we're actually providing a sidewalk that's like a clear path of travel that's signed, so that if you're in the drive-through, you can see that there's actually like a pedestrian crossing through the drive-through.
All right, because that's where I was going, because
Yep.
I don't see people patronizing it, because maybe it's just they take calls. I don't know. And I was kind of hoping that Starbucks would expand to the north a little bit and occupy some of that space, but maybe have a second window or something. I don't know. But but if there was a business that had foot traffic, it sounds like you're thinking that you're addressing those issues.
Correct. Yeah, we're still going to maintain their foot traffic and also make it safer, because we're going to call it out that there's supposed to be pedestrian traffic that way. We're also, the goal of this is to alleviate the traffic that's on 1150 that you're seeing, because with this, we're keeping the queuing on site where it's going to wrap to the east, rather than right now, it's just kind of cutting out to 1150. So with this proposed plan, it should help with some of those traffic concerns that you're seeing.
Good.
any other comments or questions? Counselor Arnold,
Move to approve the site plan for Starbucks Coffee as stated within the packet.
we have a motion. Do we have a second? Sorry.
Just kidding.
Motion dies.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Ms. Maragoni, will you please poll the council?
Councillor Richter,
Yes.
Councillor Hanson,
Yes.
Councillor Hawes,
Yes.
Councillor Arnold,
Yes.
Councillor Stevens.
Yes.
All right, that passes unanimously. Very good. Thank you. Thank you for being here tonight.
Happy holidays.
Yeah. All right, we'll move on to action item number 2, consideration of the site plan for AFCU Corporate Campus Phase 1, located at approximately 4850 South, 1500 West, as requested by AFCU and AWA Engineering. Mr. Cooper.
Okay, thank you. We have a presentation for this as well. And
Dang good thing.
yeah, this one's a little bit more complicated than the Starbucks, but we do have Jake Tate and Kim Chope from America First Credit Union to answer the hard questions. So you've seen this project numerous times. This is the next evolution of what is to be one of the largest projects in probably Weber County and Davis County, I would imagine. So you've seen street vacations of the old Cozy Dale. There's been a subdivision a couple of times. The operations building has been approved and completed, so that's in operation right now. 1500 West is under construction, and there's been some signage, and most recently the Hillside site plan you've approved. And so all of those things are, again, part of the overall America First corporate campus. This is considered phase one of the larger project. Here's an aerial view kind of looking northwest of the land that America First owns. You can see the Maverick there at the bottom during its construction. The Tesla is yet to be there, so hopefully the next time we see this project come forth, we'll have an updated rendering with those kind of things. Here's a master plan that's provided to us from AWA, and the blue box indicates where phase one sits in the overall master plan of the project. And so you see there's 5 buildings as part of phase one, and we're just looking at the site that would include, we're looking at the whole site in the blue, but what's being proposed presently is just a single building and a single parking structure.
Isn't this in Salt Lake?
This is in Riverdale, Salt Lake.
What did I say?
No, the map says Redwood Road.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah, I grabbed an old one.
That's an old one.
Yeah,
Okay.
could be Salt Lake. So here's a rendering of that same master plan. This is looking at the 10 new buildings that are being proposed with the associated parking and the infrastructure involved. So some of the elements of design that are of note is the landscape area, and I'll show some more pictures here in a moment, and you can see there's 11.03 acres of landscaping. Some of that landscaping is permanent, some of that landscaping is temporary as a space holder for the other buildings, but is intended to be part of the initial construction with the first building. And so it's a massive initial phase and initial building. In addition to the landscaping, there's 17 acres of open space, and the parking is sufficient for our zone and our code. It actually overparks what we would require. So most of those stalls are covered. 497 stalls are in a parking structure, which I think is a benefit to the folks at America First, but also is a great saver of land. This is very valuable land. There's lots of things that they want to implement there, and so structuring parking is always the way to go. It's very expensive, so we're appreciative of that. The 2 buildings that are being proposed right now are the, as I mentioned, the office building there you see on the plan, and the parking structure. And then in addition to that, they'll have the new road infrastructure, the new trail connections, everything to really start off the campus right with that internal promenade that will be important to the culture and to the environment of the campus. There's a rendering of that same site plan there, so you kind of see the existing building there that's going to stay for the time being, but building A is under building permit review right now, as well as the parking structure. So subject to site plan approval, that can get going. And then, as I mentioned, all that infrastructure work with the trails and the roads and the landscaping will be part of this.
Brandon, on this one, just when we're talking about 4,800, I mean, I know this is a rendering, and so future, you know, what they saw when they drew this or whatever. But if you have 4,800 off that roundabout, is it going to be headed out through another roundabout and then through the slip, whatever?
Oh, you mean going west?
Yeah.
So that,
In the traffic study, we were talking about 4,800 being a possible route to alleviate some of the pressure elsewhere.
If you don't mind, the exhibit doesn't reflect.
Jake, let's have you come on up to the microphone so the folks online can hear you.
Jake Tate with AWA 2010 North Redwood Road, Salt Lake City, Utah. This doesn't reflect that option. This was done before the slip ramp came about, so there is a little different configuration. If you went to the roundabout and almost directly to the east, or excuse me, to the west, then there would be an access to hopefully on and off of that slip ramp. So that rendering was done before we got to the slip ramp point with UDOT.
But the bigger roundabout on the left goes through another roundabout, a smaller roundabout?
No, it goes directly to it would be directly to the freeway from there.
Okay.
why don't you stay there, Jake, if you don't mind?
Is there even is that a reality at all?
It's pretty, I don't want to speak for UDOT, but it's a lot closer than it was a while ago. Okay. And the one good thing we have for us is that they had a little heartburn with having an access onto and off of an on-ramp. But if you guys have been down on 215, down on about 45th southbound. They actually have one, and they just put in on and kind of a wishbone exit and in, right out onto the off ramp of that 215 interchange. So the precedence has been set. Ironically, that goes directly into Utah's campus, so the headquarters. So funnily enough, they approved it for themselves. So we're hoping that they'll extend it up to us as well. And we've been working with the traffic engineers who are doing the design for the new interchange and provided them with all of our line work, all of the traffic studies that you've have in front of you and that we'll talk about tonight. And they're incorporating that, working to incorporate that into their model as well. And hopefully that will be the one that they select.
I believe also they are looking at or have approved, I'm not quite sure, a slip ramp on Parish Lane heading north. So as you get off northbound on Parish Lane, instead of having to go eastbound and then making that awkward left to get to Chick-fil-A and In-N-Out Burger, that'll just tuck you right behind the 7-Eleven and the In-N-Out and hit you on the frontage road so you can head north. So
Does the traffic study have the on-ramp part of the slip included in it?
Yes, it
Both
does.
the off and on. Okay.
and that drawing that I showed you in the work session actually shows the slip ramp a little bit better than this rendering does. So we'll get to that point. And even this rendering actually doesn't show it, but this kind of shows you what the completed phase one would look like with all of the, or I guess south phase we'd call it, with all of 5 buildings associated with the parking and the improvements. So if you compare these two pictures, you can see where some of that landscaping that would be installed as part of this first phase would go away over time as new buildings would come about. So we're calling this first phase, and then the overall 5 buildings the south phase, just to make it more confusing.
Does the first phase include, I know at one point you were saying it was going to be a branch, that little building?
That's coming on shortly thereafter.
That's
That will
included.
come on mostly likely with the retail that you see on 1500.
Okay.
And we can talk about that too here in a minute when Brandon's done.
Yep. So again, just another rendering of how that looks like the entirety of the south phase. And that's important. I wanted to show that because with the potential approval of the phase 1 site plan request, which is this area here, as I've marked it in that blue, it's not anticipated that new buildings would come as they're being proposed, would come to the Planning Commission or the council as a new site plan request. The Planning Commission did request to be updated on that, so I would leave that to the council as well as to whether or not you would want to see some kind of a transmittal when it comes to additional buildings, building B, C, D. But this is a site plan approval for that entire site, and then they would be required to come back in the future to get a building permit for additional buildings unless you deem otherwise.
Can I just,
Yeah.
real quick, this first phase, what timeline are you looking at here?
With the approval here tonight, the building permits are in. We're looking to start as soon as we can. We would start.
So,
in January
meaning
if we
when are
could.
you going to come in for phase 2? Is that next year or
Yeah,
2
so
years?
once the building permit is issued for this, the intent is the design teams will start into design for building B, which hopefully we could be starting construction in 2027 to 2028, just kind of depends, but it would be right on the heels. This will get complete probably mid 2026, maybe early 2026. It'll take about a year. Is that what we're saying, about a year? 18 months?
18 months to 2 years.
So if we start in January, mid 2026, these buildings will be coming online. And then at that point, we're going to be coming in for permit for building B. So the first 2 buildings are pretty set, and we know what's going to happen, what amenities are going to be there, and the intent is to roll right into B.
Okay, so how much latitude, if the first 2 buildings are approved and you start proceeding, something happens and you need to modify slightly your whole site plan, how much latitude do you have?
That would need to be clarified by staff, but we are kind of tied to the footprints, and you can kind of see the way that we've designed it. It's pretty clear where the buildings are going. But I don't anticipate there being that site plan, but Brandon, I don't know what the intent would be if we had to, maybe if we went to 4 buildings or a larger building? What would that entail?
So that's what we discussed with the planning commission. So the idea was that with the approval tonight, if it's granted, then they would be locked into this site plan, and any subsequent buildings would require a building permit, but not an additional site plan approval, with the exception of any material change to the approved site plan. So if they reduced it by a building, or if they shifted buildings around, or if that main promenade changed in a major way, or the fire lane, or any of the material items of tonight's consideration, they would have to come in for a reapproval of this site plan or a site plan amendment.
Well, I guess what I'm thinking is if you expand, buildings could go vertical potentially, and I don't know, which obviously increases the impact. I don't know what the likelihood of that, or if they're pretty locked in on, because
With how
Metro
long
First
we've-
has had a lot of expansion,
Yeah.
and this might meet their needs for the next 10 years, but then then what? So,
Yeah,
as this thing is developing, could those buildings become bigger, increasing the density? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying, and I think the intent has always been, because of the amount of land that AFCU has, that these buildings would be similar in nature, so we don't have a big undulation of building sizes. That the intent would be, as they grow, they add another building, not necessarily make one bigger. They just expand, and we've planned it out so that we have an up to 10 buildings that could be. Obviously, the big catch on this, and we'll get to that in a minute, is traffic. And currently, as is with everything that's out there right today, just as is, we can essentially build 2 office buildings and the retail along 1500 before the capacity of the transportation network is at its maximum. And then that would roll us into a lot of the improvements that we'll talk about shortly. And, that's really, AFCU is really relying on this infrastructure that we're proposing to allow them to expand, because we cannot get to 10 buildings if we don't have those infrastructure, and a lot of that ties to the RDA and getting the funds that will help get that done, and that will benefit the whole community, the whole city. Up here on 4400, 1500 Riverdale Road will all be improved and benefit from it. So that's kind of where we're going, is we can get 2 buildings and potentially some of the retail, but they may hold off on the retail if that means they can't build any more buildings, because at the end of the day, they want the campus is what is the vision. But our hope is to get all these infrastructure, get the assistance from the RDA, and be able to close this up and get the whole West Bench built out, because that's what this traffic study has done. Is it kind of took everything you see here plus the additional we have included, and the improvements we're talking about, if we're able to build all those improvements, will allow us to fully develop the West Bench. Not just 2 buildings, not just 5 buildings, 10 buildings, retail, the future in the north, that undeveloped acreage. I'm not sure what we assumed on that one, but we've looked at several options to put up there, and I know there's interest in the north by a lot of different entities that we've heard about, so we'd love to entertain to see who could go up there. But that would allow us, the infrastructure we're going to talk about here shortly will allow us to develop the entire West Bench.
So does that answer your question adequately?
Yeah, there's just a lot of unknowns, and the traffic study is concerning, to say the least.
Yeah, one of the good things about this, is it being America First, is stability. I mean, America First is making this their home for the next 50 years, 60 years. They have no intention of moving. So it's a little less flexible. And if this was a developer that was just looking to lease out and try to build buildings and get people to come in, it's America First. This is where they want to be. This is where they've been for 50 years. They want to be here for another 50 years. It's not a guarantee, obviously, but it's about as good as you can get for stability in the West Bench.
I had a question, and I'm not sure if you could answer it, or maybe Kim, but I know currently you have some employees out in Roy, in the old, Omega or whatever out there. I'm just curious about where you're at staff-wise as far as filling these buildings up. When you get this first building A, built, do you already have enough employees that building is like guaranteed to be full, or do you have enough to fill the second office building as well, or just how do you picture this happening? Are some of these new hires, or just so I can
No, that's a great question. We're already concerned because what we've allocated for this building will fill up the space. And, you know, similar to when we built our last operations building, we built it thinking we had enough growth space, and we already filled it before we moved into it. So our intent is, yes, we've already allocated individuals and departments that will move into that. Will we have some higher? We have built-in growth for those departments that will move in there, so I won't say that every seat will be filled when we move in, but as it stands, we've filled every level of that building with a department and planned for some growth space for those departments. And then our intent is to move, like Jake said, into the plans for that next building. We have talked and discussed about bringing our people from Roy back over here as that need increases. That building is not 100% full over there right now, but we have a lot of departments that are looking to bring staff at least back part-time 2 to 3 days a week and have a hybrid work situation. We just want to stay on top of that so we don't get back into the pre-COVID mess that you know, we didn't have space, and we were looking all over Ogden City, you know, Weber County, Davis County, Salt Lake County to have a place for employees. So hoping to plan ahead, and to Jake's earlier comment, we can build as we go instead of just building one great big building that sits empty for a long time. We can build these buildings as we need the growth
And I think
space.
one of the things that the renderings show is that there's been a lot of intentional decisions made, and the repetition, the buildings that are there are intended to be, they look great together, and they want them to look great together. They don't necessarily want to hodgepodge it together and have a 6-story and a 2-story and a 1-story. We've planned it out. There's been years of thought that's gone into this, and the intent is for us to, as growth demands, just keep rolling through. And then the South Campus is complete. We'll come in and we'll give another presentation to start the North Campus as needed. And that's kind of the hope, is that we can just keep moving forward, and the West Bench will fill out. And
The land up there can only hold so many square feet of building space. And we can either do it in one great big building, or we can spread that out and do it as we grow and need. That plan is all based on 5-story buildings, and we do want to have that consistency and continuity throughout that space. I won't be in, you know, this is a 20 to 40 year plan, so I'm not going to be here for that full 20 to 40 years, so I can't speak to what may happen in the future. But again, if we wanted to build with purpose and plan with purpose, and not get into a situation where we need the growth space and not have it, and it takes a long time to put that together. And so we feel really good about what we've come up with and what that sets up for the next 40 years for those that will come along and want to have a place for the staff of America First, and or any other options. We have the ability, you know, if there's other entities that want to come in and participate in this space, that it opens up that possibility for us, as well as supporting a retail or that helps support the employees as well as the community.
one of the other things that will help kind of ensure height continuity is the closer we head north, the lower the buildings have to be. So that 5-story building has been shown that we can take that all the way to the very north 10th building and still fall under the airport's height restrictions. So that's another thing that would limit our height as we move to the north, is the airport.
We get bigger.
Can you remind us when the north phase would start in the future?
That is a great question. A lot of, again, you know, we call this our 20 to 40 year plan. And so if it takes us 10 years, 15 years to build out this South Campus, then we would roll into that North Campus after that time period. And I think with our RDA numbers, I think we looked at almost 20 years.
Did we
till
throw
we
the
get to
other one
that.
in here, Brandon, that had the actual dates?
I don't think I did.
Okay, there is one where we with the utility companies, as we've been planning out the backbone infrastructure for all of this, they want to know the same thing: when are things coming online? And if I remember right, 2027 was building 2. That put building 3 in
29 or 30.
29, 32, 35, 30, 38 to 40. 2038 to 2040 is when we'd be moving into the north campus. So it's
Okay.
about,
15, 20 years.
yeah, about 15 to 20 years from now.
And that drawing is part of what you received tonight. It has those dates associated with it. It's just not in my presentation.
And it's not to say that the area that was in pink, that is beyond that, could happen sooner than later. As this is just as for our campus buildings.
Yeah, as things get solidified with UDOT and that interchange comes in, and if that slip ramp comes about, which it's trending positively, if those infrastructure goes in, there's nothing stopping the entire north end that isn't AFCU's necessarily long-term plan to be developed for something else. That would open up the options up there and allow another tenant to come purchase that, or another use to be coming into play.
I know you talked about, you've mentioned an interchange before besides the slip. Is there some sort of plan for an additional
The
something? Are
full
we still?
access interchange on Riverdale Road.
So you'll be able to go all directions on Riverdale Road now. That's in design in UDOT right now, and it's on the 8-year plan. So hopefully before 2030, that will be fully done.
Most of the congestion happens when people are turning left onto Riverdale Road so they can get on 84, which they can't do right now, but that's the only way to go north. And so by getting that full access interchange, it allows that traffic congestion to flow and have those dedicated lanes onto I-15. And so that's what UDOT we've been working on, the last couple of years to get
2 to
UDOT
3
to.
years, yeah.
And that's included in the traffic study for right now. And are traffic studies routinely updated as we go? Because like, what if the demographics of the surrounding area changes, not just with what you're building, but
So-
We've updated it several times.
Yeah, what's in front of you today, this is the latest and greatest, and this is the 10,000 foot, the big picture, because we were working specifically with UDOT on that interchange and the slip ramp, kind of the big pictures. And yes, the intent is to refine this further as we move along and things change, because one of the things that we're running into is there are some concerning things in the traffic report, but most of the concerning things are existing problems that are on Riverdale Road already. A lot of the Fs, and we can get into that. I don't know if you want to transition into that, or if there's anything else you wanted to talk about before we roll into it.
Yeah, I don't want to get too far ahead. I want to make sure that we're knocking down the questions as they're coming up. So, Mayor, did you get your question answered?
I think so, yeah. I'm
Okay.
with that. Building C's already got people in it, or Building 3 or whatever?
That's our
It's
existing.
already occupied, okay.
That kind of,
Old Big D one, okay,
yeah,
yeah.
the old Big D building.
Okay.
And it will stay there
For a while.
for a while.
Yeah, that was gonna be my question. Which building is Building B? So what, like,
It's the one right north of the new parking structure, the first parking structure we're doing. So
okay, so
First
A
Green
is,
Square,
A is there and then B is the
Right across the street.
one right across the
or
street.
right
Okay.
across the,
So you don't expect to remove Building 3 until,
that's the last
Almost
one.
the last
That would be
one.
the fifth. So
Fourth or fifth.
we're gonna go B, straight above it is C, then we're gonna go across to D, and then come down to the middle with E, so that we can utilize that building as long as possible, and we're not wasting that space.
So again, maybe to just go back to the statement that I think started this part of the conversation, is that as you consider the phase 1 site plan and the additional potential 4 buildings that would come with this site plan approval, it's up to your discretion as to whether or not you would like them to come back to determine if traffic has changed or if the site has changed materially, given the new building. If you want them to come back at each building, or if you need an informational item from the staff as to what's going on, that's kind of up to you to decide tonight as you consider this overall site plan. Because if there's an affirmative approval tonight, then there could be 5 buildings built under this one approval over the period of 10 years.
Yeah. And to clarify, planning wants us to come back just to give them a kind of an update as the buildings come online, so just to make you aware.
My opinion is that we're in a time of kind of very, very rapid change. There's technologies coming online that a lot of us don't completely understand, and maybe can't even forecast the future of how they're going to impact the entire world, and certainly banking, type world. It would be my preference that we would revisit the traffic study and maybe the whole site plan with each building.
Okay.
Personally, that would be my preference. Not to make it hard on you guys, but I mean, just so we can be thorough and to give you the opportunity to change midstream and just to have that already, those safeguards in place and say, hey, let's look at this. What are we doing with traffic? And it's like, hey, people don't drive cars anymore, or there's these taxis. You got, Tesla across the street and there's a bus that comes in. And anyway, I think there's a lot of changes that could happen. And a 10-year plan just seems like a lot to lock into. Council, any comments or?
I am anxious to talk about the traffic stuff, just because I think we did get it really, I don't know if you know, we got it very late, like right as we were sitting down for the meeting. And so there's a lot of unknowns, not just ambiguity, but anxiety driving levels of unknowns based off of just the little bit that we've talked about the traffic study so far. And so I would like to get into it just so that we could ask questions about surrounding projects and traffic impacts. And
Let's do it. I think now that we've kind of solved that question, let's get into it. Because that was one of our major considerations as we looked at the site plan review. And so I've included in the presentation the map of some of the major infrastructure that would be included in the project. I've also included a couple of additional maps in the email that was sent to you tonight that shows the sequencing of those and the dates that would happen with the buildings. Before Jake kind of explains all of this and maybe gets into the traffic study, we did go over the tables in Appendix C that talks about the level of service ratings. And so maybe you can explain that better than I did. But I think from our perspective, we're looking at this project as kind of a sword and a shield, meaning that there's certain traffic issues that we have today that this project solves, but there's also certain traffic impacts that this project brings. And so I think they've done a really good job trying to look at all of that together and to mitigate as much as possible. And so it is a very good thing for Riverdale to have such a large user and such a large project to bring about these types of improvements, because otherwise they would not happen. A slip wrap would never happen if it wasn't for a project like this. The impetus to get UDOT to move the full interchange up would never happen without a project like this. And so that's what I mean by a sword and a shield. It brings with it its own problems, but it also solves a number of problems that we have despite the project. So with that, then Jake, why don't you just go over the items that are part of the transportation infrastructure that would be funded as part of this project, subject to tax increment finance. That's a big caveat there.
Yeah.
I know this is not an RDA meeting, but that is part of what the RDA request will go for, is these transportation improvements. So please cover that, and then the transportation study and what it actually means.
Sure. Thank you.
We've already
Thanks.
covered the toothpaste and the camel, so you can.
Okay, you'll have to share that one with me.
You need different metaphors.
Okay. All right. I won't be using those ones, but I'm sure it was a great metaphor. But pleasure to be here again, as always. The big thing here, and the reason why on this exhibit and the one that's in front of you, I left on some of the finance numbers on there, is just to give you an idea of the investment that is going to be required to help solve some of these problems that Brandon brings up. Already, we've kind of, as mentioned, we've already are working on the roundabout. We've relocated 1500 West and widened that, and you can see that that's between that and the $2 million that AFCU has already contributed to the bridge over I-15, the widening. They're close to $6-7 million into improving the area up there. The issue that we're running into is that some of these issues on Riverdale Road, and if we start on that side, that's probably good. So the big thing with the traffic study is the way that they do it is they'll go out and they'll take counts of who's out there right now. They'll put it out, and the two items that they care about mostly is the AM peak, so when everybody's going to work, and the PM peak when everybody's coming home. And we take those numbers and we see where all the cars are going, and we make a map of it, and it kind of tells you, it gives you percentages and helps you say, okay, 20% of the people that are on Riverdale Road, or Redwood Road, if we're going to go with the exhibit in front of you, are going to turn up 1500, and that allows us to project what's going to happen in the future and give a more accurate estimation. So that's what gives some credence to these. We're not just throwing stuff at the wall. We're actually taking the patterns that are out there now and scaling them up and adding what the project is going to bring to the area. So that gives you a little background of the underlying data that's underneath this. And when I got traffic studies are a fun thing, but whenever I see a grading system from A to F, everybody's mind goes to F equals fail, right? Cars are going to be flying off the road and it's going to be traffic jams. But the level of service in the traffic world is only related to delays. So to give you an idea, level of service A means that for a signalized intersection, which 1500 West and Riverdale Road, I see Redwood and it's tweaking me, but Riverdale Road, so that's a signalized intersection. Any wait of less than 10 seconds is an A. So how often are you at a signal for less than 10 seconds? And that's all intersections. That's not just this one. That's any intersection. If your wait is less than 10 seconds, it's considered a level of service A. So a level of service C in the middle ground there, at a signalized intersection, any wait time of 20 to 35 seconds is what a C is. So a level of service D, which you saw some Ds in there, is 35 to 55 seconds. So that's still under a minute. But if you have to wait between over 35 seconds, it's a level of service D. And then level of service F is anything over 80 seconds on a signalized intersection. So that just gives you an idea of what that means. It doesn't mean this intersection fails. It means that there's going to be a delay that is not particularly enjoyable for the people who are traveling on the roads. So just make sure that that's clear. There's not going to be carnage and fires and things like that. It's just a delay that makes people not want to take that traffic. So the good thing is...
Jake, can I interrupt?
Please.
Can we just use a quick example? On this table, it's hopefully showing better on your screen. So let's just look at an example of 1500 West at Riverdale Road. That's one of our lowest ranked intersections during a morning peak hour. Can you, and I'm putting you on the spot, can you look at one of those movements? Let's call it eastbound. So that's going to be going down Riverdale Road. Can you kind of walk us through what that data means in terms of what you just said?
I was looking through here, and I wish that the map was more clear of what these movements are. So that's the eastbound traffic. So if you just take a snapshot, and this is the top table only, because the bottom table is a different one, but the top table only in the PM hours. So the AM hours. So that's between the hours of 8 and 10, I believe, is what the AM peak hour is, and that's the time you count anyway, and then you take the peak hour in that window. So the eastbound, so that's traffic that's heading from I-15 and heading through the Riverdale Road and I-15 intersection, and so you'll have a left, and then you have. So the problem is, and that's why I wish you had an intersection. When you get a report that's a full report, and this is a memo. You'll have an intersection and it'll show what the movements are, so that the L and the R2 and the R3 and the R2 would be the movement. So you have a left movement, you have a straight movement, and you have a right movement. And that's what those correspond to. So what it's saying is eastbound traffic, the top one is the left movement. So that'd be cars pulling off of Riverdale Road to turn left onto 1500 West, sorry. And that equates to, I think if you add all those up, you can get, it goes to a level of service E, which that is probably between 55 seconds and 80 seconds. So already we're pretty close to there, but that is still functional, and the intersection still functions at F. It just lengthens that. So the R is the straight, so you have a D still going D straight, and if you think about it, most of your cars are going straight or they're turning left. The issue is you have one left lane, but you have 3 or 4 straight lanes there. So that's why it's a better movement there, because you have more lanes to distribute the traffic across, though you do have less people making the left-hand turn. But if you go down to the next one, which is the L2, that's the one that's an A, and that's the right-hand turn, because you can imagine that's the least amount of turns that come down as you're heading east, going down. And what's the road called that makes that quick U-turn and comes around? The right-hand turn from eastbound. 1500 West, and then, yeah. So that's the least one, and that's why that
was
one's
on
still
Freeway
in.
Park, right? It turns into Freeway Park, goes
Yeah.
towards
Parker,
Bravo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that gives you an idea of what this means, and that's kind of and this is in 2050. So this is in 30 years from now, and this is that's what UDOT looks at. They look at the long term to see where they have to allocate their money and their funds. So you can see there, of all those interchanges, there's only one F, and that is the southwest. So that is people heading towards Riverdale Road.
From America First, yeah.
Yeah, so that's people head towards I-15, and that would be a right hand. That's a straight, actually. The R2 is the straight movement. So, and that's just from the volume of traffic coming in. If you go into the peak hour on this one, you can see all of the Riverdale Road is terrible. There's mostly Fs on the I-84 Spewey in Riverdale Road, the bottom table in the PM peak, and that's just, you've all experienced it. You know all the traffic that's going from Riverdale Road westbound out to I-15. But that essentially is what this table means. And of all that, that's the one movement that in the AM peak is a problem, is the straight throughs that go to I-15 and on into Roy, the R2. That's what that indicates there.
So thank you. And then maybe contrast that with 1500 West and 4400 South signalized in the same morning peak hour, that top table.
Okay, so this is up at the roundabout on the north, but we are actually proposing in our improvements, which we can talk about, is to take those roundabouts out, both at that one and at Porter Way. Is that the name? Parker Way. And those would be signalized. And we talked a little bit last time about signalization, and it allows you to control the amount of traffic that gets through. So in 2050, when AFC would be fully built out, all the retail, all the commercials there, all the buildings, this is all 10 buildings, you can see level of service. All movements on 4400 and 1500 West are passing. Even the D is considered a passing in the traffic world. But that one would be northeast bound. So that's heading down 4400, and the D, I believe, is the straight through. So that would be the only one that would, when the signal turns, it would take a little bit of a distance. But I'd have to break that down, because when you're heading there, it's going to be two movements there. There's a straight down the road, and then there's a left up Parker, right? Parker. So those are the two, and sometimes it's the left. So I'd have to, again, I wish I had the map with this, that they provide that. And in the next traffic study, we'll have the map so we could point directly to what that is. But what that's saying is that at that intersection, there's no failure, even with all the future growth and with all the improvements that we're proposing, that there isn't a failing on 4400 in the future.
So if we have difficult movement at 1500 in Riverdale, and we have pretty easy movement at 4400 and 1500 West, is that a scenario where we're incentivizing people to go down 4400 and bypass that 1500 West Riverdale intersection, thus putting more traffic down through that neighborhood?
So I hate to use the word depends, but it does depend on what happens with the infrastructure. So what I can show you is, if you go back to the breakdown of the site plan that shows the improvements we're proposing.
I think it's in this here.
Yeah.
There we go.
This is good enough. So on the packet that we gave you, we proposing some improvements there on the 1500 West and Riverdale Road intersection. So some of those include, what we're going to do is, we're on the westbound traffic, we're going to extend the right turn lane that's in front of Maverick. We're going to pull that back about 100 feet, so more people can get off to turn right and to get into the intersection. That'll help take some of that traffic off of Riverdale Road westbound. And the actual southbound movement that comes out of the ASU development, we're going to go to dual lefts there, and we're actually going to dual rights as well. So there'll be a dedicated right turn lane that doesn't have to stop. And the way we're going to do that is, we're going to lengthen the right turn lane, and we're going to widen it slightly to get another lane in there. And that way, I like to use existing intersections. If you've been down on 134th, and I apologize, I'm using Salt Lake County intersections and up here, but where Shields is and where the Carl Malone Toyota is, as you come off the freeway, there are two right lanes, and one's a free flowing. You don't have to stop. You just go around and you can continue going west. The other one, you come to a stop, and then depending on what traffic's doing, you can turn right. And a lot of people who want to turn left in front of Carl Malone do that, because then you don't have to cut across 3 lanes of traffic. So that would be similar here, to where you could come southbound, have a free-flowing right that would give you in a dedicated lane that would go all the way to the on-ramp onto I-15. So that would keep people moving from AFCU and keep them getting out of there and onto the on-ramp. And then that other lane can go, if you're going to go southbound, you could get in that left turn lane and not have to worry as much about trying to cut across traffic. The other, it depends, is if we get that slip ramp, the reason that I could see people bypassing down 4400, to address your comment directly, they'd want to come around, go down, and then come back up to get on I-84 to head northbound. Critical to that is, if we get that slip ramp entrance, I argue 90% of the people who are going northbound on I-15 would get on right there because it's essentially a dedicated on-ramp. You just get on and you're heading north. You don't have to go through any lights. You don't have to go through any stops. You just get on and you go because it's a roundabout, it keeps moving, and it gets you on there. Now,
What if they aren't getting on the freeway at all? So like people in Ogden,
That's a great
Washington
question.
Terrace, South Ogden.
that's a great question. So that takes us into a little bit of the area of speculation. Kim, do you know how many employees you currently have who live in Riverdale?
I don't have that number.
Okay, we don't have a number, but that would be the question: is how many are actually Riverdale, Ogden, South Ogden people who live there? And I would assume that I know that Kim takes 4,400 whenever she taught me that. I didn't know that. I used to leave. We would leave AFCU at the same time to come down to meetings here, and I'd go down 15, and she'd take a right and head north. And she'd get here 5 to 10 minutes before me because she knows the secret. So it kind of depends, but based on back to the original conversation about this, the assumptions that we made on how we allocated traffic was based on current traffic patterns, and that was the percentage that we used to allocate traffic up to the north. Now, with these improvements and changes, that's gonna fluctuate. And to your point, Mayor, coming back at the different times, we can update that report and look. We'll go out and count the cars and see what they're doing as these new improvements come on. So some of the other improvements we're doing.
Just real quick, one clarification. So we were under the impression that this traffic study includes the slip ramp.
It does.
It does. Okay. Just
Yes.
want to make sure of that. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And that's what that they're modeling right now. We've seen 3 versions of what the company who UDOT's hired to kind of model this intersection to kind of get to the point where they go and do environmental and start bidding it. And this was they also agreed that this is the preferred option. There was a couple with a flyover at 48 and a few other things. And so they're looking at options, but this was the one that made the most sense to them as well. So where that will be is kind of out of our hands at this point, but we've provided all this information so that they could include that because we feel and they feel it benefits the area. So,
And one of the things that I mentioned in the work session is that's not part of this proposal or part of these plans is some traffic calming measures that we might want to do to correspond with this to slow traffic down along 4400 between 1500 and 900 or 700, reducing the speed limit from 35 to 25, putting a median in the middle that just narrows those lanes. That all would be beneficial as a promenade in that area. That's kind of the historical part of town, the major neighborhood. So creating a more linear promenade could be beneficial anyway. Highly landscaped, very decorative. It would be a nice amenity.
Can I ask a question related to that, mitigating? They finally announced the expansion of the Ogden Airport just recently, I think, but I've lost track of days, within the last few days. Do we know of their plans for their transportation issues? Because the idea, we talked a little bit about this because of the concerns of, we really need to mitigate for the residents to try to not send thousands of cars down 4400 by the school, and especially Parker Drive. Are they planning any big expansions of Airport Road where, like you were saying, 4400 will be expanded going west into more lanes than what we were planning on? Have you heard of any discussion about Airport Lane that might encourage people to
So
go that way?
The project area plan, I actually wrote it for the Ogden Airport, and it does include a full upgrade for Airport Road within the airport. The problem is 4400 from the roundabouts going west is all Roy. And so none of that was part of the plan. We had met at the time with Mayor Dandoy and talked to him about potentially doing some things to widen 4400 up to 1900. And that was largely dependent upon Ogden providing some right-of-way space on the north side of 4400 into the airport. There were some rezones and some other things that were happening there that allowed them to do that. It didn't happen. So I don't know the feasibility of them widening 4400 because you can't go to the south very, very adequately because of the homes there. You'd have to take a whole bunch of homes. Going north, expanding 4400 to the north along the airport frontage was much easier, and I don't think that happened. But Airport Road does in the project area plan, get a full reconstruct, a widening, a straightening.
With more lanes than it has right now.
Yeah.
So it could be more friendly for people trying to get to 31st Street. If, like you're saying, maybe we mitigate on the other side of 44
Yeah.
by Parker to push, say, you don't want to go 20 miles an hour, go a different way.
It's heavily underutilized. Airport Road is largely because of its historic condition. It's better now, and the fact that it's so windy, and then you get to what we call the P trap coming up to 31st. So all of that can get squared away, and people might see that as a much better route.
So there's a chance, but we don't know.
There's a chance.
But 31st Street into Ogden would be much better than going down 4400 and trying to get on the Riverdale Road. You know, I mean,
it depends on where they live. We know we get plenty of people that, the only reason we had that traffic backup on 4400 was the people who know they can bypass Riverdale Road to cut across. But that's probably my biggest concern. We're so excited about the West Bench development, and especially that it's America First, and what a beautiful, nobody could have even imagined it. And I don't want the project to slow down, but that's my biggest anxiety at this point, is we've been so excited about it that I don't know how much we've thought about how is this going to impact the residents. Mm-hmm. And just to explain what I've shared before, we have a few small residential areas in Riverdale, and historically it's always been the focus to minimize impact on residents. And we can't do anything about Riverdale Road. It's going to be a mess. It's going to be a mess. These improvements are actually pretty great. Mm-hmm. There's no way around it whether America First is there or not. Mm-hmm. It's going to get worse over the next 40 years in this plan. So that's amazing, but that's the anxiety that it gives me is, for me, when we talk about Riverdale's Main Street, it's always been 4400 because that's where our parade is, the school's there. That was the main historic road when Riverdale was established. And so trying to keep insane amounts of traffic out of those neighborhoods for the residents' benefit is really my biggest concern, because once we start moving forward, even with this first phase of proving it, the ball starts rolling. And even though you'll come back with traffic studies, at a certain point, what will be too far in and what can we do?
Yeah, so the traffic studies are what really put forward the mitigations to the issues. So as the issues evolve, that traffic study allows us to provide new options. And that would, honestly, what the future of 4400 is kind of a city decision. Like what you want it to be needs to be decided by the city, and then traffic calming can be done. You can do something really great that would make sure that long term it is a low volume kind of slow street. But that's got to be up to you guys to decide if that's what you want on 4400, because we can do it. I think the widening that's happened up there with the bridges and everything is going to give us the flexibility. But as soon as you guys know what your vision is there, and I say we, the city and whoever decides to do that expansion, and that from what we're seeing in our traffic study is a widening or a traffic calming would not be justified by even our traffic that we're adding there. So once the city has a vision, you can incorporate that in, and obviously we're always happy to help you to do that, but that isn't necessarily triggered by our traffic. So we can help you with that vision, and by cleaning up the Parker Drive intersection and the 4400 and 1500 West intersection, that really will clean it up and open it up so that we can then focus in on what you want to do on 4400. And that's definitely, traffic calming is excellent. You can do some really cool walkable.
And I know this
meetings.
is really long term.
Yeah.
Maybe most of us won't be here, but I'd hate to be remembered as the council member who kind of signed the end of residential areas in Riverdale.
Yeah, no, well, I hope
traffic impacts.
And you guys don't get to see a lot of the background, but I hope you get to see that we're thinking long term too. We're thinking 20, 30, 40 years down the road. That comes into the utility infrastructure that we're putting, the sewer upgrades and the water upgrades, and everything we're doing is with the intent of we're looking at the end game and trying to come back rather than just diving in and stumbling over the problems as they come. And that's what the RDA has been really helpful at. It allows us to do those infrastructure improvements now so that they'll benefit the whole community, not just America First. And it gives us an opportunity to do that.
And just procedurally, Just because we approve this doesn't mean we're approving traffic signals on 4400 West.
Correct.
Or,
Right.
yeah, or 4400 South. Sorry.
So I will say this, that the improvements that
tied to
we
that.
suggest on that page that's in front of you, 2030 is kind of the trigger year, because that would be building 3. And as we mentioned, currently as it exists, 2 buildings is good. But if we're going to 3, then all the Riverdale Road intersection improvements have to happen, and then the 44 have to happen. So we have probably 4 or 5 years before that becomes critical. But 2030 in the back of your mind, that's the year that a majority of these would go into play. And that kind of correlates with UDOT's, hopefully, interchange improvements as well. So right about that time.
There may be other solutions though. We may get
Definitely.
creative, and they're like, "Hey, look, we're going to just build a
I'm
bridge
still
that goes
holding out
straight
for
by
hover
the
cars.
airport." What's that?
I'm holding out for hover cars. Then we don't
Yeah,
have to
I
worry
mean,
about anything.
yeah, we're all going to be flying around in drones by then. So, but I just
Teleportation.
I think there's a way to direct people out towards the airport. I love that idea. We're gonna have a massive new bridge going west, and I think we can kind of.
And I think we can instigate some of those conversations. As was mentioned, we've been in contact with Roy, with Weber County, with the traffic, with what is it, the Weber traffic. I forgot the acronym, but it might be time to have another meeting with Mayor Dandoy and just kind of show him what we're doing and kind of point that out. That hey, because it was actually our traffic engineer that was like, they need to widen all the way out to 1900. And I saw this.
There was talks they had something big coming, or was that the airport expansion?
Dandoy's familiar with this. He knows
Oh, yeah.
that it's an issue. We've had those discussions with him. Again, a lot of it's just going to come down to how we're going to fund it, because he's not overly excited to pay for that out of his coffers. So.
Yeah. And we'd probably have to get negotiations or discussions up with Ogden too, because the same way. It makes all the sense in the world to push that north into the airport where there's nothing, rather than taking out all the homes and displacing residents on the south side. So there's a few discussions we could at least keep going.
And Parker Drive too. We were just looking at Parker Drive. The bridge right before 31st is a constraint, but Michelle and I have been talking about some opportunities that might be available to address the bridge from a floodplain mitigation standpoint through FEMA. So all of these things are kind of dominoes, and there's enough width throughout the entire Parker Drive right-of-way that looks like you could expand it fairly easily to allow for 2 lanes each way. So I think there's lots of
Do we want to do that though? That's the question.
better than 44, right? 4400, because
Probably not to the people that live on Parker Drive.
I
No one
think it's
fixes it,
just
really.
options that we look at. I mean, whether
we
we
need
would
to
go
look at all
down
the
there or not.
options,
Yeah.
yeah.
Even if it wasn't a 4 lane, even if we went with a 3 with a turning lane or something to that effect, that could easily be accommodated. And these are some of the things we've been looking at for grants on that. I guess it'd be the west side is looking at sidewalks and a potential extra lane over there just for those reasons. So it's just options. Everything's on the table at this point. We don't know that would be a serious consideration, but it could pull some of that traffic away from 44 if we get there. But
Annie, that was why we required the new homes that were built to have hammerhead driveways,
Is there
so that they could turn around and pull out, and they wouldn't have to back out.
on the shoulders?
And part of that comes back to the vision. Maybe that's something the city could look at, is what is the vision for the future, and then we figure out.
Parker.
Yeah, the new houses on Parker that can't remember where exactly, but they were required to have hammerhead, not part of Hosted, but the ones further down
Okay.
were required to have hammerhead
Okay.
driveways.
Any questions on the traffic? I know it is a bit of a big document to read, and if you don't know traffic studies very well, it can be overwhelming. But if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them while I'm here. Hopefully, I've educated at least some of your concerns. And
More questions? Now's the time.
anything on the site plan or anything we've talked about so far?
Counselor Arnold.
I'd move to approve the site plan for American First Credit Union Corporate Campus Phase 1, stated within the packet.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Guys, too.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion?
I'd like Oh, go ahead, Steve.
Does this,
Sorry.
so are we gonna incorporate that they're going to come back and talk to us at each building?
I think so. Do we need to state that in the motion? Maybe the,
Part of the motion in there.
okay.
And to the site plan, we gotta, they're gonna come in with
Just to include that provision that they do come in periodically, just to report back when
I
they,
think we should define it as,
before a
before
new
each
building
building.
comes in, yeah.
yeah.
Okay, motion agrees.
Second agrees.
Second agrees. And Counselor Hanson, did you have a different comment?
No, I don't know how much more we can do. We want to keep moving forward. We're super excited, and the future, we can't know. The numbers are awful, but Riverdale Road and the numbers are already awful. And a lot of these mitigation things are going to be really beneficial to the area. And it's exciting with Ogden announcing the airport that there is hope that there's going to be a bigger area-wide transportation plan, put into place that over the next 40 years it'll accommodate, and that hopefully we can keep the staff focused on the priority of keeping our community protected while we are good commercial partners also. So as long as we keep our eye on the ball with that part, I think it's great, and I really appreciate all the work you're doing, especially on the UDOT part. I know that's not easy, and that's going to be, it's going to be amazing for the area to have those things.
Thank you.
I guess we don't need to maybe hold their building permits until the roundabout's done or something. Like, I don't know if there's
If you could control the weather, we'd get it done tomorrow. But
I've got to get a jab in. I promised someone on Facebook that it was going to be done in April, so now it's promised. Like, as soon as it warms up, the asphalt goes down.
Yep,
So, okay.
that's the intent.
All right, so we have a motion. We've had some discussion on it. Any further discussion? Ms. Maragoni, will you please poll the council?
Counselor Arnold?
Yes.
Counselor Stevens?
Yes.
Counselor Richter?
Yes.
Counselor Haas?
Yes.
Counselor Hanson?
A cautious yes.
All right, I'm glad they were unanimous, though, so that's very good.
Is that a no? It's like an abstain.
Can we qualify our answers now?
Can we say maybe?
Apparently. So that does pass, and so America First has a site plan, so that's an approved site plan, so
you.
congratulations.
We appreciate y'all.
We are excited about it, but yes, I think we are a little hesitant, so just know that going forward.
How many hits per pylon does it take a pylon to go on the ground?
That's a great question.
Just depends on the ground,
Depends on the ground.
Yeah,
obviously.
23rd, we'll find out.
it's going to be a lot because there's a lot of pylons. So
Is this like 279 or something pylons?
Hillside.
Oh, wow.
So we do have one more item.
Jake, would you hold around?
yeah,
Number
for a minute.
3, the AFCU Corporate Campus, 1500 West Bike Lane discussion. This is a discussion item. Mr. Cooper and Jake Tate.
Yep, thank you. And Jake, step on up, please.
Thought you were going home.
Excited.
So in the transmittal, I have included the bicycle master plan that was approved, I believe, in 2012 or 2014. And in that plan, it showed a proposed bicycle sidewalk that ran through the same general area, but through the Cozydale alignment. That has been vacated, as you know, and we're now proposing the new 1500. So there was a number of thoughts around how the bicycle lane might go through there. There's a couple of constraints, and Michelle, if you wouldn't mind pulling up those 2 attachments that were in the packet. And Jake can speak to the specifics. So we looked at the bicycle lane on the north side of 1500, and there's some problems with that because it hits down by where the Motel 6 road goes up, and it constrains itself there. And also, even before that, Tesla's stormwater is kind of in the way of that alignment. And so then we looked at an option on the south side, and the south side turned into what is being proposed now, which is a 10-foot shared path. So it would be concrete pavement, but it would be both a sidewalk and a bicycle path combined. And as I mentioned in the work session, one of the important considerations for all bike paths is the connection. So you can see in the map that was part of the bicycle master plan, it shows connecting from the 4400 roundabout down, crossing Riverdale Road, and then coming up Freeway Park Drive and then down to basically connect to the south side of the city. And so those infrastructure elements are not in place. Crossing Riverdale Road is a serious consideration when it comes to pedestrian or bicycle traffic. And so we just wanted to make sure we were having the conversation and let you know what we were thinking, what Jake was proposing, and then just get any thoughts that you might have. So maybe elaborate on that proposed alignment of the south side.
Yeah. So the big thing on the original layout is the Reynolds office buildings there. The curb actually sticks out probably 5 to 8 feet from where the Tesla curb is going to go in, or I guess we say Tesla. The curb along Tesla that's getting put in with the 1500 West widening. And it worked out well for people in the bike lane to just go straight, because it's almost perfect. You go straight up and on the sidewalk, and then you can go down to Riverdale Road. But technically there wouldn't be a bike lane there. Now in the future when those developed, we could have them pull it back and make it a uniform frontage, but because that property is not developing right now and the ownership isn't involved in this, we can't necessarily go and just tear out their frontage. And some of their detention pond actually sits out in the right of way, and that's why we couldn't just push it back easily. It would take a little more detention and some other things just to get the hillside to get up there. So when we came in, we thought, well, what are the options? And I should say, I do like to bike. I have a road bike, and it may not look like it, but I really enjoy it. I would never ride on a sidewalk if I didn't have to. Most of the people who ride road bikes, you'll find, will stay in the road. They will get in the turn lanes in between the cars, and they'll go across. So the hope is that we could take this 10-foot sidewalk and extend it all the way down to Maverick and in front of Maverick, and so you could cross at an intersection at the light, and you could come up on this 10-foot sidewalk and come all the way along it would be the east side of 1500 right there, yeah. And this one actually is the one with the turn lanes. Can you go back to the other one? That one, right? Yeah, go back one more. Okay, this one, yeah. So on the east side of 1500, we're putting that 10-foot path, and that would allow bikers to basically have an unobstructed pathway all the way from here. It goes through the roundabout, as you can see on the bottom snippet here. It goes across. You cross on a crosswalk through the roundabout, and then you're back on the path that we're putting in with the ops building and finishing the roundabout. So that'll be done in the spring. And you don't have to get off the sidewalk all the way up to 4400. So it's a good option, and it's a good way with it being 10 feet wide, it allows walkers to not necessarily be concerned. On those 4-foot sidewalks, you can't do both. The walkers have to step off, but 10 feet, you can have a bike or two and still have a pedestrian on there and not have to have them dive off the side of the sidewalk to not get run over. So it's a good compromise. It allows us to do both, but it's just kind of up to the city what they want. The big thing is the master plan said you had to have it, so this is a way to make sure there's one contiguous bike lane all the way down, whereas the other side, you'd have to get out of your bike lane, go up on the sidewalk, which we're technically doing in this version too, but you just don't have to get off. There's not a transition, and it gets you down to the intersection. And I believe, remind me, Brandon, it's the east side that has the crosswalk, right, to go south across Riverdale Road, and that's why we preferred it on the south rather than on the north, is because if you were on the north or the west side, you'd have to cross to the east side of Riverdale, and then you could go across Riverdale there. So
simply put, does a 10-foot shared path in your minds meet the requirements of the master plan for a bicycle path?
Better than nothing, or is there an option? A different option?
So my issue with this, I love it, having the 10-foot path, but now with the e-bikes and scooters and all that kind of stuff, I worry about having the walker, anybody that would be walking, because I've been going to ask Casey this for a long time. Where do they fit? Where do e-bikes fit in the world of, if you have an EV car that is driving and you have an EV bike that's on the sidewalk, I mean, at what point is it illegal to
where they can go
to
so
be on
fast
that
now?
particular one? Because I mean, they're smoking. I mean, even on our trail by the river, they're flying down that thing, and
There's so many CCs. Like once you hit so many CCs or so much power, then it becomes more of a.
So if you're EV, you have no CC.
HP.
Yeah.
Class 2, class three. When you have to keep that
Now,
on.
that's a tough subject because there's a lot of benefits to e-bikes, but there's also some dangers. And so, we've had this discussion on like the Parkway. I think it's a great thing to have because you get a lot of people out that wouldn't normally be out there, but there are some speed issues every now and again. So.
And a lot of cities regulate this, both on their trails and their sidewalks. Some cities prohibit electrical vehicles on sidewalks altogether. We have no ordinance that I know of that regulates the use of electric vehicles anywhere.
The trail, I was pretty sure I read that the trail does not allow motorized vehicles on it. And then there was a big discussion somewhere. I'm not sure if it was on the Riverdale side or somewhere else that I was on, but they talked about which class of e-bikes become motorized vehicles, because the lowest class doesn't, and I think the medium class is not considered a motorized vehicle when you look at that particular type of restriction. But the highest ones, and I think that those have top speeds of like 35 miles an hour. Those then or higher. Those then become considered motorized vehicles and shouldn't be ridden on any sidewalk or pathway that restricts motorized vehicles.
Can we stripe it at all? So walking stays to the whatever, right?
Yeah, we can. We definitely can. We can do whatever we want to that. It's in the city's right of way, but the question is do you stripe it for direction or do you stripe it for walkers and riders? We could do either. And that would be
Because
at
the
the
10
city's
feet
discretion.
is both ways, right?
Yeah.
What's the
free for all.
material? What's the material?
Concrete.
Concrete.
Wild, wild west. Why not?
So if your thoughts are trending towards an 8-foot shared path, then we can look at, because it'll be a while before this whole linear section is put in, we can look at some ordinance that could regulate speeds and use on a shared path specifically, or we could look at the whole city and define trail use and those kind of things. I think we have time to do that.
Well, and with this many people, I would bet UTAs would want to be involved somewhere once they start putting a bus route in there.
They're already working on it.
Yeah, we've had conversations with UTA.
And microtransit too. I'm assuming on campus you'll have microtransit available, so the scooters from Lime and those guys, a lot of times those are geofenced to keep you off sidewalks and other things like that. So I think there's a whole cadre of things that we've not really considered in our code that this would open up.
I can tell you there's going to be a lot of segues going from Building A to Maverick to get that Diet Coke run throughout the day. So,
Yeah, you're going to need more than a 10-foot path. And no speed limits.
yeah.
What do you guys think? Or I guess there's no motion on this. We're just kind of discussing whether we want them to do something different, or does this meet what you guys feel like is our active transportation plan?
I don't know what the answer is. I used to use our trail a lot, but I found it so unsafe, especially in certain areas because of the bikes, and not just the e-bikes. I'm talking very fast bikes. I don't patronize that because I feel it's unsafe. Now I can go south from right out here and go south, and because it's more open, and I can see further ahead, or they can see me. But I don't know what the answer is, because 10 feet is not that much, especially when you have two-way. And I don't know what the answer is.
I think a lot of this can be mitigated with speed restrictions. I mean, you take these trails and you go north up there. There's a lot of places where they're posted, 10 miles an hour, and that's it. And that it changes a lot. And I like this plan. As you know, I use scooters quite a bit, and there are places in Riverdale you just can't get. And this is this is a step in the right direction. Absolutely.
We even talked about, I mean, there's a lot of money out there for active transportation, and there's just a lot of money set aside. We might be able to get some sort of bridge over Riverdale Road to come over to the south side. They're always looking for things like that to connect neighborhoods for pedestrians, or so there might be some options to even be more connected. But I think this is fine. It's fine with me. I think it meets what we want. So, any other questions or comments? Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Tate.
Thank you.
All right. We will move on to the comments section of our agenda. First, we have a time for the city council. Any comments for this meeting? Councilor Hawes.
I emailed Ms. Margoni a video I took. We talked about the light at home.
Oh, yeah.
I videotaped that on my way home. Yeah, it's pretty funny looking.
I've seen this a couple times.
Did you get a seizure looking at it?
Just about. It's pretty
funny.
Is it a street light?
It's in the park. It's in the parking lot. Parking lights. And I think aliens are coming down. It's like, wow.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's bright. It just strobes. It's just
I'm sorry.
Any other comments from the city council? We'll pull that up. Any comments from the city staff?
No, we have nothing else.
Hey, Jake, I did have something for you. You were talking about the continuous right turn. We actually have one here in Riverdale.
Okay.
It's on 1500 West,
All right.
right across the road as you come from Freeway Park Drive. There's a continuous right. You do not have to stop to come onto Riverdale Road and go straight east.
Right.
Yeah.
More people understood that.
Say now whether people understand how to use those, yeah, they struggle. But anyway, if you can get them to do it right, it's pretty slick.
It is nice.
But,
Especially that, where our hopes is that lane to go straight onto the on-ramp. So
Yeah.
most of those people are just,
yeah, so they can work pretty well if people figure it out. Let's see, other comments. I thought there was something. Oh, here's our light video. Oh, wow. Yeah, that is not ideal. Boy.
Isn't that for the airport expansion?
Not sure who you need to contact to tell them that it would be really nice if they fixed that.
Wow.
It's in the works. So I just actually text Steve, I don't know if we'll get back, just to see if he's got an update. He went over there.
I just had to have one other thing. I know we have a new chief. We're trying to get on his feet and stuff. But I had been working with Chief Shawley to try and get him to do a report similar to the police report about what the fire department's been up to.
Yes.
No, Chief Shawley was.
Oh, you had.
I was working with him to
He
do a
gave it
bit.
to us one time, I think.
Right, but now he's gone, and I know Matt's trying to get his his feet underneath him. But
I explained all that to him this week.
okay, I want to know
'cause
what
he
they're
didn't
doing.
quite understand
Yeah.
what the whole report thing.
I think it's a
was
lot better for the council if we know what kind of calls are going on. Not like the old ones Chief Shawley did, but the new one that he did just once or twice.
about. He did one. I sent him that last one and said
Yeah.
kind of like this.
Just have him read the police one
Yeah.
and just say, be like Casey.
Shall be like
Hey, that's our new motto.
What would Casey do? Yeah, I'm fine with that. So our whole department can do that. So anyway, all right, with that, I don't have anything else. So we would need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
All right, we're adjourned.
Get a second that fast on that one. Oh, gosh.
Well, it's after 7:30. Gotta get to
Mark's
bed.
Candies over here. They were calling my name. Mike.
Merry Christmas. See you before. Yeah.